Today, we are diving into a topic that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's incredibly important for every entrepreneur and business owner to hear. Your business doesn't need you, and other hard truths. To help us navigate these hard truths, we have an incredible guest joining us today, Laurie Barkman. Laurie is a powerhouse in the world of business transitions and exits. With a wealth of experience, including her role as the former CEO of a $100 million revenue company acquired by a Fortune 50, Laurie knows what it takes to build and grow a business with the end in mind. Capitalizing on her business succession experience, Laurie founded the Business Transition Sherpa, where she provides transition advisory and coaching to entrepreneurs. She's also a certified mergers and acquisition advisor within Stony Hill, specializing in valuations, sell-side, and acquisition services for companies in the lower middle market. And Laurie is not only an Amazon bestseller of the Business Transition Handbook, but she's also an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University, teaching a master's capstone on corporate innovation. Laurie's expertise has been spotlighted in media outlets such as Newsweek, Forbes, and Yahoo Finance, and her award-winning podcast, Succession Stories, is rated in the top 2.5% of podcasts globally. Today, Laurie is going to be sharing with us her insights on why it's crucial to build a business to operate independently of you, the common pitfalls that we face in this journey, and how we can dramatically increase our enterprise value by planning for our exit from the get-go. So, whether you're a seasoned business owner or just starting out, this episode is packed with valuable lessons that you won't want to miss. Let's dive in and uncover the hard truths about building a business that really doesn't need you.
You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in.
Welcome, Laurie, to That Big CEO Energy. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. Well, I am so excited, as I mentioned before we kind of got this interview rolling, about our discussion today. And I think one of the things that makes me so excited about it is people really are desiring to find businesses that don't need them, right? And what do we mean about that? And how do you really find that balance so that you can build a business, that you enjoy, but then also when you find yourself really struggling between the 24/7 and the hustle culture, how do we bring that back, right? And step back and let really the creation of the business thrive independently. And I think it's interesting because this concept really isn't about diminishing our role, right? But really about recognizing systems and processes and people that truly drive the success. But I'm so excited, and today we're gonna dive deep, I hope, into the realities so that we can kind of understand from your perspective how we can achieve sustainability and growth without being overly reliant, right, on our businesses. So to start us off, can you share a little bit about, who you are, how you sort of moved into this area of business, and a little bit on your perspective on the fact that our businesses just truly don't need us.
I would love to. That's a great way to start, I think, is just the recognition that we all go through transitions in our career. And I'll share a bit about my transition journey and fast forward to what I do today, just to anchor us with where we're going to end up here. I am the Business Transition Sherpa, and I work with business owners from transition to transaction, from creating value to letting go. And a lot of people first ask, well, what's a Sherpa in that context? What does that mean? So let me start with that. And it's about a transition as a movement. It's not a one point in time. It's from here to there. And in life and business, we all go through transitions. It's part of being human. And I come at the approach from an advisory, educational, transactional, mergers and acquisitions advisor. My head, heart, and wallet framework, right? We have to address all three. How I got here was 25 plus years in a career working for someone else, right? I always worked for someone else, whether it was a startup or big corporate global company. And for the majority of that career time, I was in the marketing teams and leading marketing teams. So growing in my career, having pretty significant budget responsibility, team responsibility, and found my way via a recruiter to a CEO position. I was an outside hire at a third generation company, privately held company in the transportation and logistics space. And my business unit was about 150 million in revenue when I started. And instead of being there as the intended successor for a long period of time, over a 20-year period, I was there for 3 years. And the reason why it was not as we originally thought it would be was because there was an acquisition. Our company was acquired by a global transportation and logistics company. And we went through the acquisition process, myself and the other executives, and for a period of time was an officer of that global entity, which was really exciting. But the reality is that after transaction, there's transition again. And it really opened my eyes to what it was like to kind of, have that accountability as a key executive, to keep our foot on the gas, to deliver the numbers as expected, and at the same time, deliver on a successful transaction. So there was a lot of pressure, as you could imagine. But going through that and coming out on the other side and seeing how the family went through the transition, the decisions, obviously, that they needed to make kind of post-acquisition life, I think they did a lot of things right. And it was a real interesting idea for me, thinking, how do I put it all together? I have the C-suite experience. I have a lot of tools in my toolkit, including strategic planning. And what I ended up putting together and what I do today is I created a Sherpa framework, right? I created a framework for strategic transition planning. And the podcast I launched in 2020 had that ethos. It had that mindset of, let's have a transition mindset. Let's have conversations about what it takes to get from here to there. What are mistakes people have made along the way? And then creating an advisory practice. And now with my course, it's a one-to-many practice where I can reach many more people all around the world. And certainly with the podcast and my book. So I give a lot of knowledge for free, because I believe it's so important to have these messages. And I appreciate you having me on to ask these questions so that it's not a taboo thing to talk about building with an exit in mind.
Building with an exit in mind. And I love that you mentioned the 3-part, which if you've been in any part of corporation, there's been circulatory conversations of head, heart, and wallet, right? That is really the desire of every business and should be really on creating a framework on what it looks like internally as a company. So when we're talking about building a business that doesn't need you, can we walk through the 3-part, starting with our head and then moving to our heart and our wallet, and what that looks like both as an individual and maybe if individuals do have larger companies with employees, also that side of the business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great place to start to talk about transition mindset. And I oftentimes, that's where I do start in terms of my framework. That is the first thing we work on. One, it helps me get to know the client really well. But two, and they get to know me, I'm asking them questions they probably haven't thought about. And these are the questions that's just so easy to kick the can, right? I don't want to have the can kicking on these items because it's quote unquote easier to talk about the transactional stuff, right? What's the valuation? Why is this an issue? Why is that an issue? And those are more tangible, not tactical or strategic, but they're in front of you. And the personal transition, the personal readiness, the questions around identity, what brings you joy? What brings you joy when you think about your future legacy? All of those types of questions we tend not to think about. And let's face it, business owners, we often are alone in our own heads. And I find just the process of talking, I'm not a therapist, right? But you can imagine it kind of is very therapeutic and cathartic to let it all out and talk about some of the things that have been weighing on them. And maybe they've kind of red circled and said, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't know the answer to it, so forget it. And then they'll move on to what's my valuation. And so I think the transition mindset is also very powerful when we recognize that if our mind is supportive of something, our body will follow. You can't go to a political rally not believing in it. Otherwise, your body is going to be like, what are we doing here? And you're going to leave. And it's the same thing with working on a transition for your business. If you are that can kicker, I'll deal with it later, and it's not urgent right now. It's, Stephen Covey, to begin with the exit in mind. My course and the ethos of the course is to build with the exit in mind. It's called Endgame Entrepreneurship. And I named it that very purposefully. I really thought about it because that's what it is. And there's so often building with the exit in mind when you are a technology venture-backed startup, as an example, right? I've been through the MBA process. I've been through the entrepreneurship MBA curriculum. I'm an adjunct in an MBA curriculum at Carnegie Mellon University, so I can kind of speak from that experience. And often in those environments, for at least when I was going to school, especially, it's changed over the last 10 years, but it was all about becoming a venture-backed startup, launching a venture-backed startup in the technology space. Now, again, it's broader, certainly, but the idea here is that when you're pitching your business to venture capitalists, they will ask you, well, what's your exit plan? Who are you intending to sell your business to? So my general question to my clients and to the world of entrepreneurs is, why is that question only reserved for venture-backed startups? Why? Shouldn't that be a question that we ask ourselves regardless? Now, you, in your opening comments, referred to different kinds of businesses, and I'll maybe put them in different categories. And it's not a right or wrong. It just is what it is. And one of those categories is a business that we run because we're excited about it. It's a life passion. It might be our next act career. We're getting it off the ground and we're 100% okay with it being just us, right? And so that's a job, right? Just summarize, it's a job. In other cases where we are solopreneurs, but then eventually we've created processes, we've added people, we've scaled up a bit, and now maybe we view our company as an asset. And those are the people that I really want to reach, where they want to make the leap from job to asset. They don't know how, right? What are the things they need to think about? And also the people who are in that asset mindset, which is great, but how do they take it to the next level? What are things they should be thinking about as well? For the person who's the startup or hasn't started yet, hey, great. You're going to benefit from hearing this now and say you're not going to be a can kicker. Yay. Make a commitment to not kick the can and start from the beginning. It's so sad, I think, when there are owners who are closing their doors because they can't find a buyer and they're surprised at that, which is really a shame. You can't do exit planning when you're exiting. It's just too late. And if they only knew, right? If they only had this information, I'm trying to prevent that. I'm trying to prevent people from having transition or exit regrets. One of the biggest is price. I didn't get what I wanted from my company, or closing my doors entirely, or, the list goes on and on. I sold at the wrong time. There's all kinds of reasons why people can have regret. Another big reason, and I think to the point of your question, I'll go back to it, is identity. And if we are leaving our business reluctantly, right, we're being pushed out. It feels like we're being pushed out either because of disaster, divorce, death, what we call the 5 Ds. These are negative things. These are push factors. These are things pushing you out of your business. How are you going to feel about that? You're not going to feel great, as opposed to having pull factors, things that you're excited about, things that are pulling you to your next thing. And there's positive correlation data on this, which makes sense, right? If you are not a can kicker and you're actively thinking about working on making your business more attractive, transferable, and you're reducing risk in the business, then the value will follow. It just makes sense, right? And we do see a positive correlation there. And as you would expect, on the negative side, there can be a negative correlation. The sharks start swimming when they smell blood in the water. And in the middle is the watch out zone. So for anybody that's thinking, well, what's that? It's the retirement zone. A retirement, is it positive or negative? Well, it depends, right? So it's usually neutral and in terms of business value. So you got to really think through the transition and working out what makes sense with the buyers. But I think the other part of the middle zone that's a watch out is complacency. If you take your foot off the gas, that was one of the parts of my story, right? One of our main jobs to run that business was to not let the acquisition distract us. We had to keep everything as is and so on. And that's the middle zone. I've talked with owners and I'll say, well, what's your exit timeline? Oh, 10 years. Oh, okay. Are you in charge of sales? Yes, it's me. Well, what are you doing to reinvest? I'm not. Oh, okay. So over the next 10 years, what do we think your competition's going to be doing? And they're going to surpass you. And then 10 years from now, you're going to look at your business value and go, that's a problem. So we don't want complacency to get the best of us. And all that wrapped up in a bow is the starting point in a nutshell, right? Which is really about getting our head in the zone of a transition mindset.
Yeah. And I think it's super important that when we are in a head mindset, and you had touched on it briefly, of thinking about if you are ready to be done in 10 years, there has to be growth from the point you are right now in 10 years, because you have other people that are living in the same circle as you that are going to be growing that much more, right? And so it's not just about making the exit plan, I don't think, but it's more about being strategic in how, when, and what value your business is going to have at the end of the road. And I think about, you mentioned them, the businesses that just close their doors and walk away. And we saw that a lot in the pandemic. We saw that, we see that in a recession. But we also see in a recession and during a pandemic, new starts. There are millions of businesses that come out of a recession. And so I can't help but wonder, what is the mindset from those folks that have taken a negative situation and flipped it on its head into something positive? And then where did they go with that, right? They have the heart for building something great. And I think oftentimes it's really, really easy in our businesses to lose the heart of what we're doing. And when we start to think about an exit plan, we get so set on what the end date is and how many months or how many weeks, right, that we have left in this. And we can't wait for the buyer to just come along and whisk us away. And then we're gonna go do something new. There's a little bit of our heart that still has to be in it, right? Keep the pedal on the gas, because that's what yields a bigger wallet towards the end quite frequently. And not to say that that we're all chasing money at the end of the road, but it is a huge factor. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, when we are in our businesses in the day-to-day, what are some action items that we can be doing to be able to start to think about a comprehensive exit strategy and have it built from a heart framework rather than just thinking about the dollar?
I think it's a great place to start to document what your vision is for transition, what core values are represented in your company or in your perspective. Maybe those are the same or maybe they're different, and you could document both if that makes sense. And ultimately, kind of a transition mission statement. So what's the vision for your transition? Just like if you would do this kind of planning for your business, my book called the Business Transition Handbook ultimately leads the entrepreneur, business owner to think about strategic transition planning as the ultimate way to kick off this type of thought process. Now, it's the last chapter, not the first chapter, right? Because everything before it is about recognizing ways to create value in the business and help reduce risk in the business. And so each chapter builds on itself. And not surprisingly, in my book and in my course, I start with the personal transition. I start with that transition mindset. And then from there, the thought process is to then take a fresh look at the business as if you're a buyer. What do we see when we see your business? And one mechanism for doing that is taking an assessment that I have. And this assessment is a great way to look at your business from an outside perspective. And what we get back is quantitative. It's not my opinion. It's not your opinion, right? It's based on data. And the database is pulling from companies in your sector. So what's really cool about that is we can do what if scenario planning. And if financial information is provided in this assessment, we can get an initial estimate of value. And I think it's important as we recognize this, the heart-centered part, but we don't want emotions to take over, right? So I think that there's a balance, a good balance that we need to have of the intentions we set. It's important to set intentions and then quantify and take out some subjectivity. It's not about what you think about your business. It's about what the market thinks about your business. And we have to pull that in. It's really important to the process. It's not just about what you think, because this is a private market. And in a private market, we can't just go on to Yahoo Finance and look up what's the value of a business. We have a methodology as practitioners of people who do valuations, and there's a standard practice for that. But the reality is it's an art and a science, okay? And the reason why is because there's a subjectivity to the intangibles. We can look at financials and, financial history. We can do adjustments and all that technical stuff. And then we have to look at these other criteria and go, well, wait a minute, this company's doing these things really, really well. So we might move the multiple up. But then over here, we're going to discount it. And so it's that net multiple of the ups and the downs that ultimately we use for estimates of value.
I love that. What are some other hard-hitting truths about our businesses and the fact that they just don't need us? Why doesn't our business need us?
It is such a hard-hitting truth that our business doesn't need us, because a business that can't thrive without its owner is going to most likely be viewed as a low-value business or an unsellable business, because it's difficult to transfer. It's difficult for a buyer to envision what value they will get. There's a difference between price and value, right? Warren Buffett said, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And a company that can't thrive without its owner, which is either like we were talking about the solopreneur business, that's an obvious one where there's one person in the business, but that's an iceberg potentially, because you might want to look underneath the surface and go, oh, wait a minute. What assets does that business have that are transferable? So when we challenge ourselves to think about, well, what problems is our business solving for another company? It also gives a very strategic framework, right? So we can do product market fit or service market fit to determine what it is we should be providing in the market and get customers, right? People are buying from us because we're solving a problem. It's the same mindset, but it's at a strategic level. You're at the fourth floor looking down in your business going, what problem does my company solve for another company? Same framework, different application. It's very strategic. And once people see that, they're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, right? It's the same idea. What problem is your company solving for another company. And that's one of my favorite chapters is who should own your business after you? And there's lots of different buyers out there. How do we find the best fit? If we couple it with core values and the vision and some of the mission things that we talked about earlier, with ultimately what pain, what problems is your business solving, it can lead us to a very interesting needle in a haystack, right? If we can find that group of those types of companies that might be interested in what we have to sell.
Mm-hmm. When we think about being a solopreneur in our business and we are sort of in the weeds and we're the one doing it all, what are some strategies that you think that we can implement in order to move to maybe more of a team module? Maybe, what are some factors that we need to start thinking about so that we aren't the bottleneck in our business?
Well, one thing to start off with would be if you're a service business, or if you're a product business, or if you're a service business, how do we productize your service? Do you have a repeatable process? Is it documented? If no, that might be a place to start, is thinking about, well, what is the value? What's that pain point you're solving for your customers? How is that documented? Is it teachable? Is it teachable to other people so that they can deliver what you're delivering? If the answer is no, then again, okay, go back to the starting point. If the answer is yes, okay, give that a try. Doesn't have to be super fancy. It can just be a Word document or a Google Doc. Just document what are all the steps that are being repeated. Next level would be putting that in a project management system or some other learning management system. There's many of them out there. I'll just suggest like an Asana. Notion is one people are using. So anyway, there's lots of tools to be organized, stay organized. You could record videos, right? You could create a learning platform that makes sense for you. So teachable, is it valuable? Is it valuable to your client base, not valuable to your company? But the answer would be yes, I guess, if it's valuable to your clients. But meaning they're willing to pay for it, right? They're willing to pay for it. Your client's willing to pay for you to do that work. Client's not willing to pay you for all your admin stuff, right? So it's really that external view. So teachable, valuable, and repeatable. Is this something that happens once a year? Does it happen a lot? And that's one activity lens that I have in my course and that we talk about in the book for how to take your work and break it down in a way where you might say, aha, there's potential here for people to join me in the execution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That is so powerful. And I also needed to hear that. I'm sure there's tons of other people that do as well. Laurie, thank you so much for your valuable insight. I really appreciate getting in this lens of being able to see the transition, right? And so for those that are listening, if you can't see the transition, if you have no idea what this even could potentially look like for you and your business, I really recommend reaching out to Laurie. She is a wealth of knowledge and just a beautiful human. And I think really at the end of the day, and my listeners hear me beat this into their head, so we're going to say it again for the masses. Write it down, right? Get some pen and some paper and sit with yourself and really help yourself understand what your business is asking from you. Because I think we don't take enough time to really understand what it is that our business desires from us. We know what we desire from our business, right? And the things that we need. But what does your business actually need from you? And sometimes that is for you to say, c'est la vie, we're moving on to another big adventure. And it could be in your very best interest to do so. And Laurie has tons of resources, right? Laurie, where can we find you to find everything that you have available to us?
The best place would be my website, the businesstransitionSherpa.com. All of my podcast catalog is there. All of the resources we talked about today, which includes my book and my course. And I want to thank your listeners for being part of this discussion. And invite them to a couple of things. If I can share a couple of offers I have for their benefit if they choose to. One of them is to download my book. I offer a free digital download. I usually promote this on podcasts because I want to give a gift to the listeners. And I think the book is a great tool for that. If they want to buy it on Amazon, absolutely. Thank you for that. But, you know, getting the book is my gift to you. And then also for people who are interested in the course, Callie, I'm gonna give you a discount code that you can share with your audience.
Fabulous. Thank you so, so much. And again, if you are in a business transition or you feel like your heart is leading that way and you're not quite sure what that looks like, Laurie can certainly help you out with that. And Laurie, I just want to thank you again for being here and giving us your knowledge today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.